kind of like when I'm driving in my car and my kids are like, Mom, stop dancing. And I'm like, I gotta dance though.
Don't ever stop. I love that music.
It's got a fun vibe to it, right? Hey guys, it's Brenda Meller with Meller Marketing. We're bringing you back for another slice of social media pie, which is my live interview series where I bring on inspiring people to inform and educate you. And look who I have with me here today, Katie Martell. Hey, Katie, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm so freaking. I was about to swear in your live stream. Very excited to be here. That's how excited I am.
What would happen? Would they like kick us off? Do you think? Would they like shut the whole operation down at that point?
This is live. That's what happens. And you work with babies, you work with animals, and you work with Katie Martell. Anything could happen. They know it. It's just, I'm going to keep it clean though. I promise.
I think, isn't it like YouTube, I think will shut your video off or they'll mark it as like adult content. I don't know what would happen on LinkedIn. I was doing like a
NC-17 rating.
Maybe, I don't know. I was doing like I had some new equipment the other night and I was doing it was just a quick LinkedIn live with my son and he was like spinning the camera around and like it was going around in circles. And I'm like, they're probably going to shut me off. They're going to be like, you can't do this anymore, right?
Yeah, you're going to induce seizures among our members.
Right.
That does sound fun though. Is that video somewhere? I would like to watch it.
It is. And I was going to take it down, but you'll appreciate this as a marketer. Sometimes you do things and you're like, well, that was kind of goofy. I'm going to go and delete that post. And then you look at it later and it's like blowing up. Like people are like, oh my gosh, that was so fun. Yeah.
And look at I was promoting today's live stream and I put up, I wanted to try the poll feature. Did you see that? I know you commented on it.
Yeah.
It has over 3,500 views and it's a silly poll that basically says, what kind of pie will I be eating on air? Stay tuned to find out. And it's like, there is no other pie but key lime pie.
Yeah.
I think 3,500 people.
That was amazing. And you've got such a huge following on LinkedIn, but that was such a clever use of the poll. It was like different and unexpected and kind of funny too. So kudos.
Thanks. We'll see. But let it be a lesson to all marketers watching. Irreverent polls tend to work. That's the takeaway.
Right? There you go. Well, awesome. So I want to welcome anyone who's watching us this morning or afternoon, depending on where you're watching us from. We are live on LinkedIn. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. So if you could please drop a comment below and let us know where in the world and where in the household maybe you're watching from, because realistically, we're all kind of working from home, right? I'm in Metro Detroit, and Katie, you're in, is it Boston?
I'm right outside of Boston, yes.
Okay, awesome. And I'll drop your comments on. And when you guys comment, not only does it let us know that people are watching this, right, but it also helps me to kind of test the technology and make sure that it's actually live streaming, because every now and again, you'll get a hiccup that kind of happens in the midst here. And I see someone is already a fellow key lime lover watching us here today. And do you have like something with you here today, Katie?
I'm not kidding. I have an actual slice of pie. I think Brenda's branding around social media pie was so brilliant that I brought pie because I'm actually gonna eat it on air because it's lunchtime here. Yeah. I actually just had breakfast, so we're gonna have key lime pie after breakfast. Here's Brenda. Oh my God.
And that's homemade, right? Your wife made that for you, right?
My beautiful wife, Martine, shout out, made this for our anniversary last week.
Oh,
and there's not a lot left, but I have been spacing it out.
Oh, that's wonderful. Kudos to you for, I mean, I can't keep pie in my household for more than a couple of days because I will either eat the whole thing and I'll start to slice it up. The key lime, you can't really freeze it, right? You got to like eat that fresh and
you have to for the principle of the matter. But you also have kids too, right? We don't have kids yet. And so it's really just me and anyone who is unwittingly at my door going, here's pie. My mailwoman, our neighbors got pie. Everyone got pie.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we're going to jump into the conversation here, guys, and we're going to be talking about it because it's above us right here right now, marketing during COVID-19 and beyond. And Katie, I think, has really cornered the market on this. I've been watching her, admiring her. I told her before we jumped on today, I'm like, I'm kind of nervous today interviewing you because you're like this legend, right? And Katie, I originally met you through Together Digital. I think it was, I want to say you spoke at 2 conferences now because I think it was like 2 years ago and then last year. I saw you on stage and absolutely amazing, very charismatic presenter, very engaging as a speaker, relevant. And I was looking through doing my research. I'm not stalking, I'm doing my research on my guest here. And I love you have this tagline of, let me just pull this up in full screen mode here, unapologetic marketing truth teller. And I gotta ask you, what's the backstory around that? Did you come up with that catchphrase? Is that something that somebody coined for you?
Somebody actually coined it for me and I stole it. Andrew, shout out to you. My colleague at the time, I was in 2016 or so, actually before that, I started to write on LinkedIn. This is also how I ended up with a lot of followers. Let it be known, there's no secret. Sometimes it's just luck. And I think I was right place, right time. Around 2016, started to write about an issue that I saw in the marketing industry. It was femvertising, right? Advertising featuring the ideals of feminism and some of the hypocrisy that comes from the same companies not exactly living up to, the ideals of feminism, like equal treatment of women internally, like, equal pay, a supporting culture for women, all that. They weren't living up to it internally. And I started to write about this gap and the dangers of it. And 4 years later, it's ballooned into what I do. It's what I talk about. It's what I write about. I'm doing a documentary on it and a book about it. But it all started with this nickname that my colleague Andrew, wrote about me. She's an unapologetic marketing truth teller. It was also important for me too, because it set this bar for me to say, you know what, if other people are seeing me this way, this is something I should aim to live up to. So it's kind of like a mantra for me every day to say, whatever I do in this world, whatever I post on LinkedIn, I try to do it with the aim of exposing what I call exceptional truths, right? Things that everyone is maybe thinking, but no one will say aloud. I work for myself. I'm completely freelance, independent. And so what do I have to lose by pushing our industry forward and telling hard truths? And that's, I think, popular in 2020. We see a lot of that.
Absolutely. And why don't we kind of keep going with this, Katie? And for those, and I'm trying not to get you with pie in your mouth as I'm asking you to do this. This is like my waitressing background. Like, can I help you with anything? Oh, which has got pie in your mouth.
It'll be gone in literally a minute. It's so good, Brenda. I can't.
So for those people who aren't following you yet, I highly recommend you guys follow Katie on LinkedIn and all other networks for that matter. But why don't you tell us, take a few minutes, tell us a little bit about your business, what you do, and then I'll be popping some comments on screen as you do that.
I love it. No, so I'm a marketer by trade, and I started in the workforce in the last recession here in Boston, and I primarily was working in B2B startups and specifically marketing to marketers. So marketing data, marketing services, marketing content. I've been marketing to marketers for over a decade. When I became a consultant around 2016, I used to have my own MarTech firm from 2014 to 2016 that was aiming to add to this, crazy world of marketing technology. And then I became a consultant and consulted for MarTech brands. So it's been a very focused decade on the MarTech side of the world. More recently, like I said, in 2020, my purview has shifted to, again, this documentary and this book, which is called Woke Washed. It's all about this weird new normal we live in marketing, where advertising is now feminist. It's now, supporting social justice issues like LGBTQ equality, Black Lives Matter, the environment. It really is a very strange year to be in marketing, to be a consumer, not only because of the pandemic, but because the worlds of social justice and advertising and marketing are colliding. My take on it is we don't really have rules for this. We're seeing some missteps. We're seeing some great examples. So I'm putting forth kind of the first iteration of a book and a film that explore this and ask, what are the rules? How do we move forward, together? And what are the risks if we get this wrong?
That's awesome. When is your book going to be out and done? Do you have a timeline yet?
Whenever it's finished. I hear this all the time from people that are writing books. There's really no end point. You have to really set a date for yourself to say you're going to stop researching. You're going to go. The good news and the bad news of 2020 has been such a weird year for writing a book about pandering. Yeah. People and companies have been pandering to the pandemic all year. They've been pandering to Black Lives Matter. They've been pandering. And so it's just, there's a lot of material right now. I'm really glad I haven't published it yet because we're living through this in real time. And hopefully early 2021, these assets will be available. And I really can't wait to share them with the world.
Well, we're looking forward to it. And I think I got the title right, Woke Wash.
Nailed it.
Right?
Nailed it. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So we'll look for that. And as soon as you have like a pre-sale link or anything going, I'll make sure to share it along with people too. And I'll add it to the video, playback on video on YouTube, I should say, as well. So let's jump into the conversation here, Katie. I mean, really nice setup. And I've been following you for a while, and I've always appreciated the approach you're taking, which is what you're saying, what a lot of marketers wish they could say. And then you're making observations on things that's like, corporations are saying one thing, but they're doing another. And I remember at Together Digital, you had like a slideshow and you're kind of showing advertisers and how they approach women in advertising and different things. But we're talking today about, marketing during COVID-19 and beyond, and where I kind of see where things were at the beginning are a little bit different, as you kind of alluded to. So kind of take us through this. What are you seeing happening right now? What are the trends, and what should we as consumers be aware of?
Oh man, it's really changed the game. I mean, I know this is probably a trope that you're sick of hearing, but 2020 has asked us as humans, right? In all aspects of our lives, to rethink what normal is. And I think that's healthy. I'm always someone you can tell who likes to, poke at the word normal and say, like, what is normal and why? Coming out when I was a teenager really set that in my mind to say, look, you got to live life on your terms. You got to live it based on your definition of who you are. Accept no one's definition of your life. Define yourself was my yearbook quote, by the way. I know I dug it up. It was me cheesing it. Like, when you're a teenager, you think life is going to be this thing that you get to define.
Yeah.
And it's harder and harder, I think, as you go through life. I mean, we live as a world as marketers, and we're told, here's what good marketing is. And here's what 2020, it just flipped everything on its head, right? And so it's forced all of us to say, well, what is the right way to market? What is the right way to do this? I have tried to remove the word should from my vocabulary, because really, if it works, if it helps people and doesn't hurt people, is it really the wrong approach? So COVID has forced marketers to, I think, re-examine what, where they can afford to, spend now, budgets that are getting slashed. I think doubling down on what works is like the core of what I'm seeing. And for a lot of brands, that looks different. I think customer marketing has become more important than ever this year, retaining the people you do have, because it's harder to now go get new customers thanks to just everyone tightening their wallets.
Right.
But within that, there's this beautiful trend of, I think, where marketing was going anyway, with the rise of content marketing, right? We saw brands being asked to be helpful, to be educational, to be a useful tool in the lives of buyers, rather than just being a supplier of something. That trend that we've been living through over the last 10, 15 years, really, I think, matters now. And now you see in 2020, the companies that were kind of well-versed in that ability to now put forth helpful, valuable resources for COVID-stricken buyers. Companies like Joann Fabrics is a great example. They gave away free fabric and masks, to make face masks at home. Simple pivot, but something that really added value. On the B2B side, we saw Salesforce stand up leading through change, this really interesting just set of content for executives as they try to figure out what's going on. And they did that very quickly, like right away they started to do that. And even you have companies smaller like Form Labs, which is a 3D printing company here in Boston, here in Cambridge. And they basically said, look, we need volunteers. We need people that have 3D printers, regardless of whether you bought ours, to manufacture supplies that were in demand. Things like nasal swabs for COVID tests and the little, I don't even know what they're called. They're like straps that hold on face masks. Okay. And so they put together a network of 1,500 volunteers to help them create, with their 3D printers, materials to help. And so brands are now thinking, how can we be helpful during this time, right? It isn't how do we take advantage of the pandemic? It's how do we show that we actually care? How do we prove it with useful, timely, relevant action that is really backed by the resources that we have as a brand?
So let me ask you a question. So at the beginning of this, and I heard you say the word should, in the beginning, I feel like back in March, April, there was a pause that kind of happened, and then immediately followed by a week later, an email from every company you were ever on the email list for, and some that you're like, I don't even think I've bought from them in 5 years.
Yeah. And
it was like the carefully crafted corporate message. And then not too long after that, it was rolling out the same advertisement, and it was the same series, of coming together and those themes and things like that. So I'm sure you've seen some mistakes or some missteps, and you don't need to name companies by names, or if you want to, you can. But what have you seen, lessons learned from the earlier days of COVID that kind of have evolved to where we are today?
It really was this very strange bandwagon email thing where I don't know. I mean, I used to work in PR, I get it. There's always this, what do we do? Panic moment. Like, we need to say something, right? Because saying nothing would be wrong. The same thought process, by the way, applied to when Black Lives Matter became the overarching narrative of the country. There's this urge from companies to quickly do something, anything. And I feel like without enough long-term strategic contemplation, what are we trying to say? What do we actually do? I think we always have to go back to basics, always. And in this case, the issue that you saw when it was March, right, when all these emails started to come out, the issue is that they were vague and that they were really a lot of lip service. A lot of them were very like, hey, we're here for you, and you're like, okay, how? Show me you care. Don't tell me you care. Show me. And it wasn't enough for people to just show up in the inbox. That really doesn't do anything. The basics that I started to look at this through was, brand is a promise. and brand is an experience. And if you think of promise and experience, it requires tangible, here's what we're going to do for you, here's how we're going to measure what we're going to do for you, and action. You experience something through action. You experience it by being part of it, not by reading it in an email. So the brands that thought in that lens were the ones that came through and said, here's the right path forward. Atlassian is a good example. Do you like how I'm pivoting, by the way, to not give you any bad examples, but only good ones? Sorry, but it's what I didn't know. Atlassian made a lot of their, they make project management, software. They made a lot of it available to teams. And it was because they had this really clear mission. And I'm looking at my notes because I want to get it right. Atlassian's mission is unleashing the potential of every team, right? It sounds vague, right? But it really helped here, because if you look at the question of what do we do now against the mission of our mission is to unleash the potential of every team. Well, it makes sense. You give away a lot of your product for free to help every team. Right. It just makes total sense. That thinking, that clear mission, that clear understanding of the role you play in the life of a buyer, that made these decisions really, really easy, rather than the vague, we're here for you. Although I do think
you have like coined terms for a lot of things too. Do you have a term? Is it like vague advertising, like vague advertising, or vague advertising?
That's yours. I like it. That's yours. That's a Brenda Meller copyright 2020. No, it's true. It's vague. It's it's normal. This is what marketing is. You have a spectrum between safe and risky. And if you're a challenger brand, you live here in the risky. And if you're safe, you don't want to rock the boat. I get it.
Right.
But we still have to grow business. We still have to drive demand and loyalty and all that. And that's where I think that was a missed opportunity. I think it really, for a lot of brands, was, here's the phrasing, missed opportunity, to step up. And if you step up in a crisis, guess who's going to be loyal to you after the crisis?
Yeah, in the long run. And I've heard a lot of people saying, one of the questions that people are now going to ask companies is, how did you treat your employees during COVID?
Yes.
And that's part of that brand experience as well, because it's not just about taking care of your customers, but if it really was in that those emails, we're taking care of our team working from home, how are you really taking care of them? And are you
show us,
right? Are you standing over their shoulders? Are you trusting them? But show us, And I think it was Katie, if I'm not mistaken, in one of your e-newsletter, and you actually call it the world's greatest e-newsletter, right? Is that the right coin for it?
Quick aside here. I call it the world's best newsletter because I could not think of a name. And I thought, well, you know what? Let me set the bar here. And,
right. No, I love it. And
hopefully it lives up to it.
I saw it as a marketer. I'm like, all right, I know I've seen Katie and say, I know what she's going to back up what she says. And you've got like a really nice conversational tone, sometimes kind of tongue in cheek with the way you're putting out information. And I think it was in one of your newsletters, you were talking about diversity and inclusion and Black Lives Matter. And then these letters that were coming out, or these emails that are coming out from CEOs of corporations. And then you go on their webpage and you look at their leadership team, or maybe their boards, I don't know. And there's no diversity. They say it, but they're not kind of backing it up.
Yeah, that was. I'm looking at my notes because I want to make sure I attribute this appropriately. There was an article that I read. It was somebody, and I can't remember, but Mark Ritson, I think it was Mark Ritson, and he did that thing where he just looked at every ad that came out in June for Black Lives Matter, or social media statement, saying that we stand in solidarity with the protesters, and compared it simply to the screenshot, you're right, of the leadership team. And I really wish I could find it because he had this hilarious, if you'll bear with me, he had this hilarious.
Please hold. I love that, Katie, you do this too, because I do this. I'm like, hold on, and I'm like, I'll go off screen and grab the book and I'll come back in and I'll be like, here it is.
It was just hilarious the way that some companies just, I don't know, are a little tone deaf to whether or not they have, they're ready to engage in the conversation around Black Lives Matter, right? It's like clean the house before you invite the party. That's it. That's my mother always said, clean house. And it was just, this is part of the larger trend that I hope to expose in the documentary and the book, the woke washed body of work. Mm-hmm. It's this disconnect, right, between what a company says and what it does. And it's not just about the board.
Yeah,
that's an issue, but there's a lot that a company does to kind of maintain what is the systemic normal, the systemic racism, the systemic injustice, the systemic discrimination that the movement really is trying to address and call out. And so the board is, one level, but how do you pay your Black and brown employees? Black women are systemically paid far less than their white counterparts. Black women are paid less than that magic 80 cents to $1 that we use, to compare what women and men make. And you see a lot of affected communities from COVID being in the Black and brown community, because many of them are working these frontline efforts. The restaurants that you patroned, the people that are cleaning, the office, they are exposed and have to go to work because they are systemically, right, forced to continue working. We get to work from here.
Right.
How cushy are we? And I think about that daily. I always think about that when I sit down at this chair, turn on that light, turn on that camera, and I think, I get to do this.
Right.
Safety. I don't have to go out into the world. There are so many, and predominantly Black and brown, that have to go out in the world and expose themselves to COVID. Yeah. That's what the movement is calling for companies to look at. How are you treating people of color throughout the business, within your supply chain, within your customer community, within your employee base? And it's really amazing how many put out a statement on social media, ran an ad, and yet failed to say anything about their own.
Oh, we just froze. Did it freeze for you guys too? Oh, we'll give it a second.
Sorry about that.
We froze. Yeah, you froze for a second. I think we're back, but it's a little.
I think we're back too. I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. So it was a really good point, and your hands were up, and I don't remember what it was because I was like, oh, we lost her.
I was just saying, most companies. It was amazing how many companies put forth statements without doing the work to understand their role in the movement itself. Understanding the movement is step number one. Before you issue the statement, ask what the movement is asking for from you. Then many companies actually did step up and put forth measurable, clear, accountable actions to show that they were actually responding to the movement in the way that the movement intended, by taking a look at themselves and then saying, here's our role in the solution. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm curious too. I mean, there's been a lot of discussion along the way too about a lot of these conversations that are happening in the protests and everything that's kind of happening. I mean, and there was a conversation earlier on, like, would it have happened had COVID not happened? And there's many things that are happening in the nation right now, and this isn't like this just started to exist yesterday. Systemic racism didn't just happen yesterday, and then we're like, oh, we have a problem with it. No, this has been going on all along. And I've heard some say it's kind of like we've been in a pressure cooker with all the stresses related to COVID and staying from home, and a lot of the angst and anxiety that we're all experiencing right now. Thoughts on that? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I actually think that actually is a great segue, kind of back to marketing during COVID. Anxiety is an interesting word. I'd love if the chat right now, people gave us a little smiley face or just a nod. If you feel more anxious in 2020 than ever before. Anxiety is one of those words that we tend to throw around without understanding, but it really is a mental condition, in that it's normal to feel anxious. It's normal to feel anxious during a global pandemic. I feel like that bears repeating. It is okay to be anxious right now. Now, in the world of if you're marketing right now, you have to have that same measure of empathy for the people that you're marketing to. What does it mean that every single one of your buyers right now is going through some level of anxiety? B2B buyers, what does it mean for a highly considered purchase, one that has multiple stakeholders and months of research and many, many, many touch points and steps? What does it mean to that purchase journey if the buying committee are anxious, right? Anxiety forces us as humans to kind of focus on survival. It kind of makes us freeze and focus on our instincts, like fear and that kind of bottom rung of the Maslow's hierarchy of need. Right? Yeah. You got it. And so if you're dealing with anxiety, you often can't take in a lot more information. A lot of us are overwhelmed already with the amount of info that we take in every day. A lot of us are doom scrolling, right? We're obsessed. We're on Twitter trying to figure out, is the president going to die from COVID? What happened with the debate last night? Like, this is not normal levels of sensationalized, stuff. We are dealing with an onslaught of consistently breaking news. That's happening for all of us. Then you add the fact that you're probably at home trying to deal with a kid. Or if you don't have kids, you're trying to deal with staying alive during a pandemic. And then over here is what's left. All the kind of patience and time you have for work and your job, which you don't even know if you'll keep. Right. So think about the email you're about to send to someone whose attention span and emotional bandwidth is like tapped out. Are you making it simple? are you making it very, very prescriptive? I think that Gartner has a whole body of research around buyer enablement, and it's worth looking at. And I can send you the link after this and you can post it. Gartner's buyer enablement content basically asks the question, are you helping the buyer to buy? You know, are you dumping information onto already overloaded humans, or are you making it easy for them to make a decision by things like calculators and total cost of ownership type, you know, interactive content, or just really, really simple content that helps move the buyer from one decision point to the next, knowing that they are overwhelmed, and that's normal for everyone.
And I have a point. I saw an ad. I think it was on Instagram, and it was some company that it was over the summer, and this was pretty early on in the summer. I want to say June, and I have school age kids, and probably served these ads because of that fact. So it was face masks that it's back to school shopping season, right? And they're face masks, and it's every day of the week. It's a different Crayola crayon face mask, and it said Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday. And I was kind of like, it reminds me a little bit of marketing by funeral homes. Like, nobody wants to see an ad for a casket. You know, nobody wants to see that. I really don't want to think about in June sending my child to school wearing a face mask. And, you know, here we are. It's now October, and, you know, the reality is it is what it is right now. I mean, my child's going to school one day a week for a few hours a day, and she does wear a face mask. But I kind of feel like even that, I know it's a necessity, but it just felt off to me. And I can't quite put my finger on, you know, what would I have done as a marketer differently with that message, if that makes sense.
With the face masks? Yeah. You know, and that's the beauty of marketing, is our job is to both be honest to an extent, but also create this sense of safety and security. And a lot of times that's not possible right now. I'm going to use the word, I promised myself I wouldn't use the word, but I'm using it, unprecedented. We really haven't, right? We haven't lived through this level of anxiety, this level of kind of constant fear. But I do think the brands that are embracing the truth of the matter are at least getting through. I mean, you tell me as a mom, would you rather, you know, Crayola ignored the problem or gave you a solution, right? I mean, this really, it's a difficult decision for a marketer. The worst thing we can do is continue as business as usual, continue on as if nothing is wrong. We have to address what's going on and address the concerns of our buyers. But hopefully, and this is where what is the purpose of a business in the world? That conversation is happening right now because there's an opportunity. There's an opportunity for business to be a very trusted institution. It's there's studies, and I talk a lot and I study a lot about trust. And trust right now is just a very interesting word. I mean, the majority of Americans do not trust the information that they get about their president, their government, one of the major institutions of our lives. And because of that, we're also mistrusting medical professionals, and we're mistrusting people that, in the kind of traditional sense, so pre-2020, were considered to be, you know, pillars that we don't mistrust. And for me, that has implications for businesses, because it means that if trust is being at risk throughout the country, then businesses are suffering from that skepticism. They're not immune from it. We are just as immune to this mistrust and the skepticism that's rampant. So it actually means that businesses have to step up more to prove that they are trustworthy, to prove that they understand exactly what you need in this time, and to prove that they understand how they and all of their resources can be of value to you. It's asking us to rethink the role of a company. It's happening also at a very high level. There was a CEO. There's a lot of shifts happening, and a lot of the shift from stakeholder or shareholder value to stakeholder value. Have you been reading about this or seeing this?
Yeah.
And so companies are starting to ask, who do we actually provide value for? And it's increasingly becoming the people that work for us, first and foremost, the people that buy from us, and all of the communities in which we have impact. I love that shift. I am so excited about this. This shift is, to me, what B Corp isn't trying to promote, what the shift to just and socially good brands are trying to really capitalize on. It's a great way to think about the world of business, doing well by doing good. That was always happening, but in 2020, I think it's now become an inflection point, right, where that's going to become the new normal. At least I hope.
And to me, like that, I mean, you have a brand for yourself. You're talking a lot about corporate brands and organizations, but I feel like there's a Katie Martell brand that exists out there too. And I feel like you align yourself with organizations and with people, and that kind of that align with your values as well, right? As a consumer of what they're offering and of their relationships as well, right?
Definitely. And I think that's increasingly, I mean, to me, that's a choice I get to make being independent. I get hired a lot for influencer work, which I think is crazy and hilarious, but I'll take it. And what I love to do is amplify stories that align with how I see the world and how I see the world of marketing. And so I get to decide who I open the platform up to. That's power.
Yeah.
If you think about that, even at a very macro level, yeah, that's a big shift. But at a micro level, every consumer has the opportunity to vote with their wallets to decide who they're going to promote and who they're going to buy from. And increasingly, and studies are showing it's the millennial generation, and Gen Z that are driving this change, although we're seeing behaviors in older generations too, that is increasingly the part of the consideration set. Do the values of the company and how they do business align with my values as an individual? That is the strongest connection between both individuals and a brand and its consumers. And I think it's where a lot of companies get in trouble. This is where companies start to do woke-washed, marketing. Right. We support the protest, we support environment. Meanwhile, the actions tell a different story. So we're all moving towards this world in which values and social justice now become part of the buying criteria. I think a lot of companies are unprepared, to be quite honest, and individuals.
Yeah, and it's probably a good market for you, because now people are reaching out to you and they're like, Katie, we don't know what to do. I mean, this is like a whole uncharted territory. It's now it's getting into this more touchy-feely, morals and values, and that's not hard and concrete profit and loss. That's a whole other world. Yeah. And how do we get involved? So I would have to imagine this is an opportunity for you. Are more companies approaching you now and saying, we need help, we don't know how to navigate this, can you guide us through this?
Yes, and I say no. I am, and I like to think of the world as in terms of lanes, and I think companies have to stay in their lane to an extent. I think we all have to stay in our lanes. There are some really remarkable organizations and consultancies that do this at a very high level and a very strategic level. Yeah. I take inspiration from Jean Kilbourne, who is the reason that I'm doing what I'm doing. If you don't know Jean Kilbourne, she was a pioneering activist and researcher, lecturer, and speaker. And she's actually, I'm very proud. She's a friend of mine and my wife's now. We saw her just last week. We get to see her all the time. And it's like hanging out with one of your idols, who I've idolized since college. When I was in college, I saw a film that she had done that everyone here should watch. And if you have children, Brenda, you should show your kids this. It's called Killing Us Softly. Killing Us Softly. It's a documentary about the treatment of women in advertising and the perceptions of women in advertising. And Jean asked a really important question. What is the impact of advertising on women? And what she found were, of course, dehumanized, degraded, objectified, and a large correlation between eating disorders and the violence against women culture. She asked that question since 1969. I mean, I have a Life magazine that I got in an antique store of 1969. Wow, look at that. She's been asking this question for a very long time. What she would do is she would go through ads and she would kind of cut out, ads. I love that, like Jackie O is in this. This makes me so happy. Yeah. She would cut out ads that featured women and she would put them up on her refrigerator and just started to note patterns. Yeah. Jean made a living and created, millions of people have seen her films and read her books, but she built this activism, education, media literacy platform that always stayed with me. I saw it in a college class and, many years later, it stays with me. That's what I hope to do. I think that my background in PR, my background in social media, in content, that's what I'm geared to do. It's stuff like this. I very much have great partners that I can send deep consultancy work to. I think it's just as important to have people like me who are evangelists, activists, speakers. Book me. Any speaking.
I was even thinking, have you ever spoken in a college classroom, or is that an aspiration for you? Because
I love speaking to college kids. I have it here in Boston mostly. I'm actually talking to Harvard next week. It's some women's thing and some group of great entrepreneurs, Babson, Northeastern. And what I love about college students, that they sit there like I did in college and they go, huh, all right, well, we're going to change that when we get into the industry. And I'm like, I'm going to swear again. Heck yes. Thank you. This industry evolves because there are people within it evolving it. We need to continue the conversation and push it. And I just hope to be that spark. I just hope to be that person that says, here's the patterns that I'm seeing, the metaphorical ads that I'm putting up on my fridge. Right. Here's the pattern. Here's what I think the impact is. Here's what we can all do differently. Go forth and do it. And I've been hired by ERGs. So if you have an employee resource group in your company, bring me in and let me talk to them about this. Women's groups, LGBTQ groups. I've spoken to marketing teams. This year has been a great year for speaking internally at some really large tech companies, massive consumer brands. I've gotten inquiries on this topic that I'm like, how did you find me? But I will say yes to this. Yeah. I'm you can tell, fired up, blame the sugar of the pie, blame the coffee, but like this feels like what I'm supposed to be doing. And it took a while to figure this out, but I'm not stopping.
No, that's a great feeling. And I think you're doing exactly what you should be doing, and you're passionate. And I can just tell there's a light from within in what you do, and everything is so authentic when you put it out. And I just like, I'm such a fan of you, Katie. It's so exciting to have you on here. So I want to, I know we've got people that are watching, and I kind of would like to invite you guys, if you have a question or a comment for Katie, please drop it below and let us know if you have any questions that we can help you with. And I'm getting a little bit of a delay from StreamYard that's coming in here. I'm getting a lot of the initial comments that were coming in. While I'm waiting to see if any additional comments that are coming from LinkedIn in here, I just want to ask a question for you, Katie. So advice, I mean, you've been giving a lot of great advice for corporations, larger organizations, maybe executives, but what about for small businesses? What advice would you have to offer them for marketing during COVID and beyond, and where we are today and where we're going tomorrow? Is the advice any different for small businesses?
A lot of marketing is very down to the basics. Know your buyer, and then know more about your buyer. I very much believe in the power of empathy in life, but I think right now, it doesn't matter if you are Adobe selling enterprise solutions or you run a LinkedIn consultancy like Brenda does, which, by the way, Brenda does great work and you should hire her immediately. I have a lot of respect for small business. I'm a solopreneur myself. I was an entrepreneur. We had a startup, and I've only worked in startups. There's a lot of hustle, tough days, really hard days when you work for yourself. And I think sometimes you have to remind yourself why you're in it. Hopefully, it comes down to the people that you're helping and you're serving, and they're who it's about. Take that and run with it. When you're figuring out, what do I do next for marketing? What nothing's working, everyone's home. Okay, figure it out based on what is going on in the lives of your buyers. Start with your buyers, talk to them. Oftentimes, you got to get out of your bubble and you got to talk to these people and find a friendly customer who you know loves you and just get to know them better. What are they doing right now? What are they experiencing? What's important to them? How are they thinking about what you do in the context of their lives? A lot of brands assume. A lot of marketers assume. We like to think that we know everything about our buyers. As the world changes, guess what? That intel changes. That intelligence changes. You have to be constantly able to get and feed that back into your strategies. It sounds so simple and almost kind of like a duh moment, but like, don't forget it. That is what's going to, I think, guide anything else you do next.
Yeah, really great point. And you know, talking to them, I mean, it can be as simple as reaching out to them. You know, if you get people on Facebook messaging your business saying, hey, you know, want to talk, or if you're getting people coming to your online store, reaching out and having the conversations with those individuals. Julie, thanks for watching. I agree. Such a great message here today. And we had another comment coming in from Michael, and I have to just pause here and say, vote, right? Vote. We've got 26 days left, I think, at this point. And you know, lots of conversations going on in the nation right now. And you made a point earlier today, Katie, about we as consumers vote for products and services with our pocketbooks, right? And with you know, deciding where we go and which websites we visit and which social media sites we're on. And as citizens of our great nation, we also have a right to change the course of the nation, and that is by voting. So I know you and I share some similar points of view there, and I don't want to get into a political discussion here today, but I just want to remind everybody to get out and vote. And there's a lot of great resources out there if you're torn between which candidates you're looking to support. So make sure you check those out. And Katie, you're a big advocate of women and women's rights. And I know you speak at Together Digital. Do you have any other upcoming events where you'll be speaking? Anything that's kind of on the near horizon?
There's a couple going on in October, and I should have a better answer to this. Bad PR. I will say you can always just follow me and find me, and I always promote what I'm doing. But that's a good question. No, I have a newsletter that I would gladly just use this opportunity to shamelessly promote, because that is where you'll find everything I'm doing. Okay. Oh, thank you. Yes, Katie Martell. I love that. It's like, make the logo bigger is coming to life here. Thank you. But I do send a newsletter, and it usually has a combination of marketing, business, so advice, content, things I love, stuff I'm doing, you know, like videos I'm in, but also a lot of social justice stuff. And I truly do think that there's not only voting with your wallet, but we all have an opportunity to leverage our social media platforms to call out organizations that are hypocritical. There's some activist groups out there like Sleeping Giants and Grab Your Wallet and others that allow consumers to really call out brands that are funding hate speech and that are funding misinformation. And it's up to individuals with the social platform to help amplify those messages. So not only vote, but vote with your network too. Vote with your connections. Vote with everything you have, because that's how we make change in this world.
I love it. And you know, I pulled the website up. I want to remind you guys, and just a quick plug here for you, Katie. At the top, I think it's in this red banner, actually. It says sign up for the world's best newsletter here. So it's pretty easy to find that link when you go to Katie's website. And I'm going to pull up your LinkedIn too. I'm trying to kind of navigate. I'm doing co-piloting and piloting at the same time.
I think it's amazing. You're doing great. This is awesome.
Where is this at? It's got the whole instrument panel. I'm trying to going in here. So I'm pulling up your LinkedIn profile up on screen here, Katie. And I know you're probably at, let me look at how many connections you're at. Well, you're at 99,000. You're like on the brink of going over the 100,000. So you're probably, are you at the connection limit at this point? Is it more like people need to follow you on LinkedIn at this point?
I think when you go to my profile, follow is the default, but I will gladly connect with anybody. Please do just send me a note. I don't police my requests. I use LinkedIn very much to, and you see that header image is actually me. I love that. I feel like a news anchor.
What is that? I was going to ask you, are you doing a video or what was going on there?
This is very meta. Okay, hold on. We're on LinkedIn. We're live on LinkedIn talking about my LinkedIn profile, which features a picture of me filming content for LinkedIn. Oh, it was a studio day. It was the last thing I did pre-COVID. It was on my birthday, February 25th this year in San Francisco. They flew a bunch of us out there. We got to sit down and just talk about marketing. I hate to be so broad, but it was this great studio day from the LinkedIn team. And it was talking about the role of LinkedIn and thought leadership and content, everything. And there were a bunch of us there. But that was the very last thing. I flew home. I actually flew to New York and then I flew home and that was it. I haven't been on a plane since then. But that content, they kind of shelved it because COVID.
Right.
It is starting to come back out now. And I'm really excited for you all to see it because that crew is so talented. Shout out to Judy and Steve and everyone. They're so talented with the quality of what they produce. And it's why I use LinkedIn so much. And it's why, Brenda, you have such a great consultancy in this topic. LinkedIn has so much opportunity if people are willing to take a few risks. This live stream, this is a risk. And Brenda, you do a great job with it. I have to give you tons of credit because we're all figuring out the rules in real time. You have to experiment. Right. So keep doing what you're doing, Brenda. We love you.
Well, thank you so much. It seriously means a lot. Like when I hear somebody like Katie saying that, I'm like, oh my gosh, because I was like so nervous getting on. I'm like, oh, I hope I don't mess this up today.
I told Brenda the only way you can mess this up is if you like hit end broadcast. And look, we have pie. So what? This is great. We got marketing talk, we got pie, we've got Katie on here, we've got truth that's being told, all those good things all around. So as we start to kind of wrap up the conversation here today, Katie, any final comments you'd like to offer? Any shout outs you want to give? Is Martine here? Does she want to come and say hi to us? Anything else before we wrap? My wife is out running because I married a personal trainer. So she's probably out, over there looping. No, I just want to give you a shout out, Brenda. I truly just want to give you a real truthful shout out. I give a lot of credit to anyone who is forging their own way in the world. Entrepreneurs are some of the most resilient, fearless, can I say badass people I've ever met, and you're one of them. And anyone who has any kind of expertise to share with the world, talk to Brenda. She'll help you make it happen. I truly mean that. Not a paid endorsement. I swear, she didn't even make this pie. I promise this is real. But I think it's amazing what you do. And it's a great model for your kids. And really, thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And it really does mean a lot to me. And I am going to look up that video that you referenced earlier. Yes. My daughter, I'm bringing her up in a certain way. My mom kind of raised me similarly to believe that women can be anything they want to be. And I even have a little thing we say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And she says, whatever it is. And I say, what can you be? And she says, anything I want. And we've been doing this at bedtime since she was like, probably 2 or 3. And she says it now. And I don't think she realizes I'm building this up in her head. But when she gets there someday, she's never going to think I can't do that because I'm a girl. She's going to be thinking about things differently. So it's women like you, Katie, that are leading the way and charging the path. And if you guys are following me on LinkedIn, you know that Katie is on my Rockstar list. And she is on the non-LinkedIn trainer version, which publishes this Saturday. And she is this close to flipping over to the 100K. So my ask for all of you watching, please go on Katie's LinkedIn profile. She's going to still appear on this week's list, and then she'll get on next week's list if I can get her over the 100,000. She's like this close to it at this point. So thank you so much, Katie, for being on. I really appreciate all of your time and just having the opportunity to chat with you today.
I absolutely adore you. Thank you so much, Brenda.
All right, guys, we're going to wrap this up. Want to ask you for one thing. I think there was a little hiccup that happened in the middle because I wasn't getting additional comments pushing out from LinkedIn. And I think sometimes the algorithm, it's like a ketchup bottle. It needs to be kind of like banged down to the bottom. So if you guys could help to bang this ketchup bottle for me, and this is how you could do it. When you leave the video, please go back on and share the video with your network. I will make sure that Katie is tagged when you share that along. I'll add my tag in there as well. I'll add a comment, I should say, in there as well. Please share the video with others because there's some really great messages that were in there. And then if you'd like to learn more about my upcoming video series, go to mellermarketing.com/subscribe. You'll get LinkedIn strategy tips as well as my upcoming interviewing schedule. So Katie, did we finish the pie? Is it gone? I'm kind of looking over on your side over there.
Do you see me? I'm like still eating it as we go. It's almost there. Don't worry, guys. I will finish this very soon.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Katie. Have a wonderful afternoon. What's next for you today?
After this, it's a podcast interview actually, but
okay.
all in the measure of continuing this conversation on woke washed. That's another shameless plug.
But let us know, like I said, when the book comes out. I'll put it in the video playback link as well. And
thank you.
Looking forward to buying it too. So thank you, Katie. And thanks everybody for watching today. Have a wonderful afternoon. Stay safe and stay healthy. And we'll see you online.
Wash your hands. Wear a mask.
Bye.